Leadership isn't theory. It's pressure. Responsibility. Decisions that matter. This is the Real Leadership Brief. Conversations with leaders shaped by experience. Tested under pressure. And accountable for the outcome.
Welcome, everybody, to the Real Leadership Brief. I'm your host, Donald Dunn, and today we've got Dr. Grow. AP Grow is a leadership expert who has spent nearly 3 decades studying what separates great managers from bad bosses. His work began in the trenches, teaching communication seminars and hearing over and over the same question: what if the difficult person is my boss? That realization launched a lifelong mission to understand why bad managers are so common and what elite managers do differently. He is the author of Perfect Bosture, the framework of elite managers, a practical guide that gives leaders a clear model for simplifying management while elevating team performances. Welcome to the show, Dr. Grow. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and delighted. Thank you. It's a bit cold out here today, but not quite like other parts of the country. So I'm fine.
Yeah, I think it's like 9 where I'm at right now. I'm here in Missouri. So,
oh my goodness. Yes, that is chilly.
So why don't we start a little bit about what brought you on this path of one, focusing on leadership, and 2, focusing on a way to help people become better leaders?
Sure. Well, the discovery was when I'd ask questions like, first I'd be teaching communication courses, and not uncommon in a communication class, there'll be a section where you're needing to talk about working with difficult people. And the question would often come up, well, what if the difficult person is the boss? And I found it just common in every city I was at. Whenever that question would come up from some brave person who was asking it, the whole room would light up with, oh my goodness, I could tell you so many stories. And it was really quite sad. But I thought, because I had experienced that kind of challenge, that I thought I was the only one at that time. And I quickly found out that wasn't the case. So I figured, well, what could I do to help maybe change that, so that not everybody has to have a bad boss story? I'd really like to change that in the world. And this is one way I see that I could do that. Background in research. And so I've been looking at this for quite some time now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, right? For my leadership, I fall back from my life experiences of being in the military. I spent 20 years in the Army, and I spent less than 6 years in corporate America. So I have a different approach on leadership because of the mission requirements, and it's not about making widgets, it's about keeping people alive. Yeah. So some of the stuff crosses over, but not necessarily everything. And when I seen that phrase, it really brought me back to a time where I was a young private, because I loved boxing, and my first sergeant who was also, in military terms, my boss. Uh-huh. He was our boxing coach, and he ended up sexually harassing a friend of mine. Oh, and it put me in that situation about, man, what do I say? How do I handle this? Yeah. This is a guy I got to see every day, and this situation comes about. But wow, those are tough situations, because you're going to spend more time with that boss than you probably will your family. And if the leadership style that they have doesn't resonate to you, it makes it very difficult, for one, for you to grow and learn, and 2, how the team builds.
Yes, so true. Yeah, you're talking about situations. I mean, I focus on bad bosses, but there we're getting into the category of horrible bosses. People that don't belong in leadership at all, really. And,
right.
And that's a difficult situation for any team member to be in, what to do about those. And, I'm sure you were delicate about it, but I'm guessing you probably did something.
I did. I ended up going to his boss, as a matter of fact. And, it it was definitely a delicate situation, and fortunately, I think it worked out in a way that's going to help him from not hurting anybody else. But
Very
I
good.
think
Very good.
I think part of this also comes down to the term bad boss. And with leadership, I have always felt that it is the leader's responsibility to adjust the way they lead so that the people they're trying to lead can learn from them. It's not the way they learn. They shouldn't have to adjust how they learn to adapt to my leadership style. Would you say that kind of people that can't adjust how they lead could be one of those things that are interpreted as bad boss versus just somebody who's young and hasn't learned that there is other leadership styles out there?
That is a great question. I think there's room for somewhere in the middle. I don't want to be too political about it as far as not coming down solidly on one side, but I do agree that leaders do need to take into account who they are overseeing, and
Right.
because people are different, but also by the same token, team members need to be ready to adjust a little bit to the fact that not everybody is the same when it comes to leadership either.
Correct.
So, we could talk all about communication styles and how to show praise or how to show correction and all those kind of things. But yeah, I think there's room for a little bit of adjusting on both sides of that desk there.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to miscommunication. That's probably the most common problem.
Yeah.
And the other part is what you said is 100% correctly. In order for a person to be the best that they can be, and grow into bigger positions to become future leaders, is you have to be able to be uncomfortable. Staying in your comfort zone your whole time is not going to get you where you need to be. And I think that's where, like you said, it can't be 100% that the leader is bending over backwards just to try to cater to the other side.
Yeah.
A little bit of that comfortness has to be there, or they're not going to grow and learn as well.
That's true. And I see management in all my research and my observation and studying. You mentioned communication as a key aspect. I think there's a couple more. I think competence is one of those things that a manager needs to be competent in the technical areas and the functional areas of everyday management, but also care. I mean, the really good managers, the elite managers, have a sense of responsibility for the professional development of their team members. And those that don't, I mean, it's going to touch on one of those three areas, or maybe more, sadly, where there's some shortcomings. And I think that what I've found, what I've discovered is that elite managers will focus on all of these and they'll be strong in all three of those areas. But you're right. It's easy to see where communications might be a weak spot. That comes out very quickly. That is easy to see. The other two maybe can hide a little bit, but eventually those things come out too.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think I fell back on communication because, again, my military background, it's a melting pot of people, and they have different backgrounds, and the way they talk and things that are important to them versus other things are always going to be different. So that's probably, on the military side, that's probably one of the hardest things as especially a young NCO, that when you're trying to lead, that to resonate to each person,
Yeah, and no doubt. But you also have the benefit in the service of there are occasions where you don't have to be tactful. It's like, do it now or die. And so those are unique situations, which I totally get. That's not always the case outside of the military. They're not often, hopefully, life or death situations, but inside service, wow, you move fast, you move quick. And if you don't, you're dead, perhaps. And so there's license to be just as direct as you need to be to get that kind of result.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because when I got out in my first job, I started out as at the manager level, but you're right. I struggled to adjust to
you like being used to just saying, do it now.
Yep. And it doesn't work. It does not work. As a matter of fact, our HR manager, she gave me a book that said, inside this book, is everything that I say that HR says is okay for me to say. And when you open it up, it's just an empty notebook.
Nothing, right? Yeah. I think I might have come across that book.
But yeah, and I think, you know, I learned way more from that position than probably I taught anybody. That's for sure. Just because it is completely different, and but there's a different purpose. You know, we at that point I worked at a lead place. We made ingots for different companies to make bullets or batteries or whatever that they needed lead for. And so, you know, at the end of the day, if things went, you know, short, we didn't make production, nobody died from it, you know? And so the difference requirement from that is different. And I think that's something that us military guys struggle with, because we don't think of it in those terms. You know, it's make mission, got to solve this problem. Let's do what we got to do. And it doesn't work that way necessarily 100% in the civilian world.
Now, there is some generational learning in the organizations as well. And I'll just mention this quickly. After World War II, people would come back from the war, and a whole slew of people who had been in charge went into organizations, and they led that way. And it was okay at that time because many of the workers were quite accustomed to that as well. Yeah. And in the manufacturing and the factory sector as well, it was very much like that. But over time, you know, that didn't stay the case. And there's had to be some changes. And certainly now we know that successful leadership today is not at all like it might have been back then. Yeah. There are still some fragments of that, though, you know, hanging out in certain pockets. But the more successful leaders find that they need to adapt, as you've already mentioned, and work with people where they're at. At the same time, employees need to understand that the leader is the leader for a reason and do their best in that regard too. Yeah,
I agree 100%. And that's the perfect segue into our next part. We've been talking kind of about the things that people have issues with their bosses. But in your research, what are some of the defining traits that you would find in an elite manager, somebody that's actually getting it and doing it correctly?
Sure. Well, I start with competence. I mean, it always seems to be the case that if a person in charge of a team or a division is competent in their work, both in the technical aspects of that, and what I mean by that is the skills that are needed to be successful in that job at that place. That's the technical area. But also in the functional aspects of management, the tasks that would be necessary anywhere, that's the start. Because at the very least, this is going to foster some respect. I mean, in our culture, respect doesn't come just because they have the title. In fact, far from it. But if they have the competency down, right, you'll at least hear people say, well, at least they know what they're doing. You know, at least they can do the job of that. But the next area, which again, I feel is just as important, is communication, which we've already talked about. You know, are they able to say what needs said when it needs said in a polite way, professional way, not get emotional, you know, keep themselves under control while they're trying to help somebody else improve, that they say things in a way that are, that they get understood, that they've checked for understanding, you know, all these different areas, so much tied to communication, as you've already pointed out. And then a third area, and I've already said this, so forgive me for repeating, but care. You know, it's just those that have care in management tend to get better performance from the team. And it's just human nature. We as workers will tend to do better when we know somebody's caring about what we do and about us personally even. Yeah. I say it sometimes in my keynote talks that to be totally professional in this aspect, one has to get a little bit personal. And sometimes there's a fear in that, which is unfortunate, but we're all people. We're all human. We all have emotions and different feelings, and we aspire for, you know, getting some kind of recognition for what we do. Yes, we are getting paid, but that, you know, people will stick around, even if it's a challenging situation, if they know there is care for the work they're doing. They will go to a position that pays less. They'll drive further away. just to get away from somebody who doesn't care. They will endure a lot of hardship just to get back to that spot of, where we're recognized for what we do. So those are the three, the big picture: competence, communication, and care. And I challenge anyone to find anything having to do with the tasks of management and the actions of elite managers that doesn't touch on one of those three.
Yeah, that care part is important for multiple reasons. There's so many times that I found that the guy that I was having an issue with wasn't the problem at work. The problem was at home.
Oh.
And if I took that time to understand why his performance was slipping, and I had taken that time to notice that there was a change, then maybe it's something that I could have helped solve. I could have put him in the direction of a place that could have helped him if it's not something that the company or myself can do.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it saves an employee from leaving. Yep. It saves the company from having to go back through the hiring process and take the chance of not getting what was a better fit than what they had. All if we just took that time to care and recognize that, hey, something changed here. Let's find out what it is and see if we can't fix it.
And that's a perfect lead into those kind of conversations. I think I alluded to it earlier. Sometimes bosses have trouble approaching a situation where there is a performance, something's going wrong, something's not the same, and they don't want to address it because it's kind of it's a type of conflict, but that is a manager's job. And to lead with, is everything okay? Because something isn't the same. And it's obviously you're not going to dive into tell me everything going on with your life, but if they're willing to share, then we can at least listen. And as you've already mentioned, point them in the direction of the resources that are available to help them get past that to get back to a most productive employee that they were before. Yeah,
100%. And I think a lot of problems can be solved just with that part of caring. I think that is probably, I'm glad you brought that up because that is probably one of the most important parts. Would you also, as far as in companies that you've worked with, would you say that sometimes the issue isn't so much that it's good leader or bad leader, but just young leader?
A leader in training and not getting the training. Yes, for sure. And I've been there. As a young leader, I just fresh out of college, my first job was in an administrative role, was overseeing others that were twice my age. And I was very humbled by that because not uncommonly, I'd be, schooled myself, as it were. But I was never the kind to pretend like I knew when I didn't. That just maybe, fortunately, a little bit of humility. I recognized that I was the young buck in the office, and I wasn't about to act like I knew it all. And let's talk about military service for a moment. You'll see, who is it? The lieutenants, the officers that come in, and the best they've got is college, right? They've been through college, and yet sometimes they'll act like, I won't swear. They'll act like they know everything, right?
Yeah.
And the wise ones will talk to their sergeants, talk to the NCOs, right? Yeah. And that's the right move. That's always going to be the right move.
Yeah, and I've had both, and I've put it down as simple. Some of them are you can teach, and others you have to let them teach themselves.
Yes, painful as it might be to watch, but I will say, and I thought to say it earlier, but it was maybe a little too early in our conversation. For those who want to help a manager, I would be very cautious about that. Even if the boss says, I'm ready for feedback, so let me know anything. I'm not so sure that's always true. And career suicide is real. There are other ways to help a person, but I think team members need to recognize it's not their job to help a boss get better. It's just dangerous. And again, even if they say, "Oh, I'm ready, I'm open to feedback," I'd be cautious about that. And I always I just don't want anybody to run from our interview to go talk to their own boss about doing better. No,
Yeah.
one of my best-selling books is How to Not Suck as a Manager. And I think it's probably the most commonly gifted anonymous gift in the world. I think it's kind of a thin book, so it probably slides under the doors of a lot of offices around the country. But anonymous, that's the key there.
Yeah. Yeah. In the Army, what the saying is you check down, not up. And,
Yes.
but the other part of that means that your boss has to be one of those people that have those characteristics that we just identified. They care, they communicate, and they do those things to help you grow as well,
Yeah.
and if we're not all doing that part of it, all the way down to the worker, you don't have to be in a leadership position to be a leader. And I
Very
think
true.
a lot of people misunderstand that.
That's true. One of my friends who's a keynote speaker, has been for years, a past president of the National Speakers Association, Mark Sanborn, says it this way: everybody leads. The only question is, where are they leading others? In what direction are they leading others? But everybody leads.
Yeah. You are absolutely right. So inside the perfect posture, what does the perfect posture actually mean?
Well, it is one who actually has the three elements that we've just been discussing. Competent in both the technical and functional skills of their role. They are solid communicators. They have it down. They know what needs said, when it needs said, how it needs said, and they're not afraid to do that. And also they have the elements of care. They're ready to hear. They have a level of emotional intelligence, that's the term we'll use, that if somebody does share, they care, right? And they're not going to kill the messenger. They're going to just listen, take in the information, and do what they can to improve the situation. So perfect posture, as I define it in the book here, is having that framework, and actually day-to-day operations exhibit that as they work with others.
Okay. And yeah, that actually answered the next question as well too. So what's one practical habit from the book that managers can apply and see immediate results from?
Sure. I'll identify one of the, I'll go back a bit. Well, you mentioned this book, so I'll stick to what's in here. Micromanaging is a common trait of less stellar managers.
Yeah.
And it's often because there's a couple reasons. They might just feel like it's just faster to do it myself, which may be true, but only in the short term, because long term, what is more efficient? Teaching others how to do things and trusting that they'll do it well. And also when it comes to maybe letting go of the constant direct oversight of other people's stuff, is there's got to be some trust there. I mean, you set it up so that they can report in and they can be checking according to a certain schedule. But that is one area where I see a lot of people could be seen as a better manager if they let people do what they're delegated to do. First, do the delegating, set it up well, make sure they know, what the ins and outs of the assignment, be ready to take questions, check in regularly, but then just kind of let people do what they're going to do. They might do it differently. And that's what managers need to recognize, that just because it's being done differently, as long as it's not way out of, way out left field, then it's still probably going to be okay. I like a quote that I heard President Reagan say many years ago. I'm dating myself here. But he accomplished quite a lot during his presidency. And in an interview just after he was out of office, he said, "How were you able to do that?" And he just said, "I put good people in place and I let them go." And I think for a lot of managers, if they can just, that touches on all three of these elements, like competence, communication, and care. And that is one area that I think many managers could work on to be a better manager.
Yeah, because I think one of the parts that they don't understand is in that relationship, there has to be trust, right?
Yeah.
There has to be trust that one, that I'm going to manage and not make your job harder. I'm going to provide you the tools and the skills that you need to do your job to the best of your ability, and not make it so that it's so hard every day that you come to work, right?
No, you don't want to be there. Exactly.
No.
Donald, you hit it so square on the head there. Too many managers are acting as blocks to productivity instead of clearing those blocks out of the way.
Do you think that comes from a little bit of fear, that they're afraid if something goes wrong, they don't want to take that repercussion?
I think that's part of it. I mean, it'll depend on the person, but for some, that is definitely it. For others, they just have a control issue. I mean, it's not about fear of anything. They just tough to let go, you know?
Yeah. I think you see that. I know I've seen that in the military, not so much as far as people on people, but the transitioning from doing the job that you truly enjoyed. For me, it was being a mechanic, and then taking that management side where it's mostly paperwork, flow, and dealing with that type of stuff. And I lost that sense of what made me feel good at the end of the day, was knowing that I figured something out that somebody else couldn't figure out, or I fixed a problem and was able to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah. You mean mechanically speaking? Like the mechanics. Yeah.
You know, and that transition of going from, doing the job to managing the job can be difficult.
Yes. And that is where a lot of people, a higher level, the hiring managers, maybe sometimes slip up a little bit. They take an individual contributor who is excellent at the job the team is doing and figures, well, they ought to be good at overseeing people who are doing that. And sometimes it works. But as you've just pointed out, the skills of overseeing others who are doing what you might be quite capable of doing is different than actually doing the work. And it's just a different job. And having the background knowledge to be sort of a player manager, if you will, is great. But focusing only on the management of a team is different than doing the work of the team.
Yes. So let's get into some real world applications, right? How can someone manage up when they're stuck with a difficult boss? We've already talked about how there is the chance of career suicide, but there has to be a way to mitigate the situation.
Oh, I'm going to repeat my caution. It's just, I don't, I'll be honest, I don't usually like answering those questions because I don't want to hear somebody comment on any of my social media like, I did this and now I'm jobless. I'm like, I will concede there is one idea is to do what you did, but I will always say in an anonymous way, maybe do that skip level manager reporting, get to somebody else who might be able to help the immediate boss. That's not a bad strategy. There are suggestion boxes in most organizations. I mean, old school actual bots. Make sure there's no camera pointed at it so they can still figure out who dropped the suggestion in there. Anonymous email. If it's an organization where email is the more common thread, fine. Just don't send it from your own home address or, the office email. It's easy to get an anonymous one. So I guess all of these are just suggestions for letting it be known, but maybe not being you the one that's clearly saying it. I just in hundreds of conversations over many, many years, I've just heard too many horror stories. And even when a boss is a friend, like they met before the job, they now have the same job, but one person's over the other. There's a different dynamic. And even if they're like going to go watch a football game together after work, it can be dicey when you say, hey, Tom, the way you're handling that project, I'm not digging it. And things can get dangerous. So I guess I am saying let it be known, but maybe make sure you're not the one doing it. And Donald, if you got other ideas from your good experiences that you can pass along, I think our audience needs to hear it here. But
I think for in my experience that it's more important that at that level that the constructional criticism comes from peer to peer.
yes,
Right.
yes,
And so I don't know if it's just because of the way I've led. I've always been a very, very approachable person.
Mhm.
I'm one of those guys that I'm a firm believer that God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yep.
And I listen to what people have to say, and then I make my thought process. And I've had people that don't work directly for me come to me and say, "Hey, what do you think about this situation? Is this the proper way to handle it?" And not so much are they tattling, but they're making me aware of something that maybe next week or whatever I see it and it clicks in my head. Oh, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And then I can have that conversation with another manager of another department from peer to peer and say, "Hey, you might get a better result if you talk to so-and-so this way, or maybe the way you're talking, it's coming across a little bit different. I was listening to what you were saying, but I see it from this level, but if I was in that level, I wouldn't necessarily see it." And I let them fix it themselves,
Yes.
without making it known that who they're working with and talking to came to me and kind of hinted to me that there's a problem.
That is a great strategy because you're right. There is a necessary level of emotional intelligence, one's ability to just control their own emotions and in fact try to help somebody else keep theirs on an even keel too. And not all managers have that. And so there are some that you can go to, but the wiser strategy, as you've just suggested, is to go to somebody else who might be a peer of that individual and suggest some different approaches that might help the team and help the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, just frontal assault, usually not the way to go. It's just not.
Yeah. And timing is everything. Doing
Yeah.
it, at the chow hall and around all of the other peers and come up, bloated and chest all stuck out as he's sitting there having lunch with his other peers is not the time to do.
Definitely not. Yeah, always we correct, and this is for any manager. We correct in private, praise in public, but we're going to correct in public and private. And if you're the subordinate, you're not going to do that. Definitely not going to do that in public.
Yeah.
And very cautiously, even in private. Yes.
Yeah. And I think also, everybody just has bad days.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what position, whether you're the president of the United States or the homeless guy on the street, from top to bottom, everybody has bad days. And sometimes those situations just happen because somebody had a bad day. I have found myself making comments and trying to lead in a way and realizing that I wasn't leading from the front. I was leading from a bad day that I was having, or a problem that I was having from at home that I was taking out at work,
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times just a simple apology will fix a lot of things.
True. Yeah, we want to assume good intent.
Absolutely.
And as a manager, if we start there, we'll be much better off in pretty much all of our conversations.
So let me ask you this. We're getting towards the end here, and I want to ask you this. When you're asked to be a speaker for a company and talking about this type of stuff, or somebody's reading your books, what is something that you're hoping that they would take away from it?
The challenge I'm finding, and this is more when I go not so much to in-house events, but open conferences where I've got people from a lot of different organizations coming together. The disappointing thing that I will sometimes see, and I only know this because others will come up to me afterwards and say, "That was amazing. Such an easy framework to remember, and I can see where I can apply it. My goodness, I wish so-and-so would have been here." But no, they're out in the lobby or they're in the restaurant having drinks right now. So the challenge I will see with the open conferences is those that maybe could benefit the most sometimes aren't there. And so I can only say, I need to corral everybody to help get the word out about what does make an elite manager and how they can do it too.
Yeah.
The in-house stuff, the takeaway I want to leave for them is, here's the framework. Let's find out where each individual maybe is strong, because lead with their strengths. That's always good. Because we get much more mileage and much more productivity when we focus more on what we do well and just keep doing that, but pay a little bit of attention to the things that could be done better. So we identify the strengths first and really stress the maximization of that in their work. But we do also want to find out where, through self-reporting and some personal analysis, where they could work to get a bit better. But again, I think there's a lot more gains when they just identify strengths and keep working those strengths, and spend a little bit of time working to make what's maybe not as strong a little better. So that's where I work in-house workshops.
Yeah, that makes really good sense to me, because I think if you throw out all of the praises and say, okay, we're not going to focus on those because we're already doing those right, let's focus on all these bad things.
Yes.
Then it becomes, okay, now we're going to build Rome overnight, because we're going to take all of these things and we're going to fix them all right now, instead of taking that elephant and taking a bite, one bite at a time until the elephant's gone,
And it can be so draining too. If there was just a focus on what's not going well. I mean, there was an era where the term going postal was a thing. And
I remember that.
And plenty of research showed that it was because management from the top down was focusing on what individuals weren't getting right. And then, well, there's another mark. And everybody would start at a high level as far as review time. They just assumed everybody's going to be perfect. But then the managers were kind of forced to look for the wrong and make, and this drove people to violence. And so that's a very real, unfortunately, mostly past example. But yeah, focusing on the negative is not a good thing. It's there and we recognize it. We want to improve it. But I think focusing on strengths is a whole lot more productive and feels better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, Doctor, can you tell everybody where can they get your books and maybe even potentially hire you for an event or a speaking event or something?
Sure. Appreciate the opportunity to do that. What I want to do is invite everybody to go to apgrow.com/store. And from there, you'll find links to the Perfect Bosture book. Looks like this. Can't miss it. Although this is audio only, isn't it? All right. Perfect Bosture book. And it's available for just $4.99. We're practically giving it away if you want the ebook version or Audible. And I'm giving away a few other things with it if it's purchased through our store. An infographic that has all the important key points on one page, as well as an Audible copy of my book, Change or Go, How to Stop Non-Team Player in the Workplace. The book is available on Amazon for people who want a hard copy. They can certainly still go to the store and find it, or just go directly to Amazon to get it. And of course, my website, apgrow.com. I have a contact page there. Easy to send me a note or give me a call. All the information's right there. Awesome.
Well, I hope everybody that's listening to this got a little bit out of it, and whether you're the bad boss or the bad employee, just remember at the end of the day, it takes both sides to make a team, and it can all be resolved with a little bit of communication, a little bit of confidence, and a whole lot of caring. And I think at the end of the day, we're all out to do the same thing. And that is to grow and as people and to make the community a more livable and enjoyable place. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed the show. I know I did. Y'all take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Real Leadership Brief, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. You can find more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.